What up YouTube, Nathan Heightz here. Thank you for tuning into my channel where I share with you my experiences learning foreign languages, or at least languages that are foreign to me. In today's video, what I'm going to be talking about is how to build up the courage to go out and actually speak to people and practice your language that you're going to be using. Personally, there's a couple things that I do to help pump myself up and also to make sure that I'm prepared before I go out and actually make a fool of myself, right? So the first thing that I do is I kind of look on the map and I kind of find a place where I know the language is spoken and I know exactly what I'm walking into, so I kind of know the context of the situation. For me personally, I find the best and most easiest way to find people who are willing to practice with you is to go out to markets and places where there's commerce, places where people are doing business. Now the reason I prefer this method is because when there's money involved, people are more likely to be a little more lenient, right? They're more likely to give you the time of day as opposed to just brushing you off as some weirdo trying to talk to them. Now this social context allows you to kind of use it as an opportunity to practice your language with them. Now, since you know the social context, you're going to be more easily able to predict what is going to be said to you. If you can get a basic framework of what you guys are going to talk about, then you're going to be able to memorize those phrases which are necessary for you to participate in those interactions. So what I'll do is I'll look up a region that I know is densely populated with an area of people who speak Spanish. Now, the more dense the Spanish population is in this area, the less likely that they're going to be strong at English speaking. And the reason being is because the reality is most people are not willing to go to such great lengths to learn a foreign language. So if they find themselves in a community with a bunch of people who speak their native language, they're more likely to just submit to those environmental factors and continue to speak Spanish. Now this works out great for us because the less English they speak, the better it is for us because it actually makes our Spanish speaking necessary. Now when you realize that you speaking Spanish is actually necessary for the interactions to take place, then you realize that there's no reason for you to be embarrassed because you're simply trying to carry out an objective. Now, of course, I know the objective ultimately is to practice your Spanish and not necessarily to actually make a purchase or anything like that. So I try to go to places where I know I can make purchases on small things that are maybe like a drink or food or something like that. Then what I'll do is I will go in there and I will ask questions. Now what you can do is you can walk into a store, you can think of questions you would ask, write them down, memorize those questions, and then go out and test it out. As you go out and test it out, you will begin to hear responses. Those responses will become repetitive, and eventually you'll pretty much know exactly what's going to be said to you. Now, knowing the response that you're going to get is more likely to give you the confidence to go out and approach your situations. These are things that only happen with experience. Another suggestion would be to think about what would be said to you in your native tongue, right? By thinking about this, you can translate it into the language that you're learning, and voila, you have a formula. Very basic. At the beginning, it's going to be a little bit repetitive. It's going to be pretty simple, like, how much does this cost? They're going to have to know your numbers pretty well. They'll give you a price, and then you can tell them no thank you, or you can ask them a question about a detail of the object. What is it made out of? Something along those lines. Now the more you practice, the more it's going to become natural and you're going to know exactly what to say. Now from there, what I do is I try to find people who I feel are open to conversation. This can be people that make eye contact with you excessively, right? Or people that you hear having a conversation next to you. If they don't expect you to speak their language, this is especially beneficial to you because by you approaching them in their language, they're going to be thrown off. And honestly, 9 times out of 10, they're going to be impressed, especially if you don't look like someone who would typically speak that language. For example, being white and speaking Spanish in a Mexican neighborhood. Honestly, in my experience, most people are appreciative that you're speaking their language. They will accept you and they will be gracious and very patient with your mistakes. Knowing this, I have the confidence to go out and speak Spanish because I know I'm not going to be laughed at and ridiculed. Another technique that I use, or that I used to use, now it's kind of become ingrained, is to know how to get yourself out of sticky situations. So if you find yourself in a conversation too deep and you no longer understand what is going on, you need to know certain phrases such as, más despacio, por favor, slower. I don't know what you said, or I don't understand. Those are phrases to kind of pull the brakes down. Now you want to use these as little as possible because 9 times out of 10, what is actually being said isn't the most important details. Basically, if you can gather the gist it'll kind of be more effective in helping you progress, because every time you pump the brakes, they're going to speak to you at a little bit of a lower level, and eventually they're going to be speaking to you as if you're a small child, and this is not what you want. You want that input that's going to be a little bit challenging, just above your comfort level. If you're completely comfortable with the input level, you're probably already given a couple cues that have told the speaker to speak to you at a normal level. Because honestly, when native speakers get rolling, they speak fast and they become hard to understand. Now, you're gonna need to know how to get yourself out of sticky situations. Another thing that you can do is learn how to ask how you say something, right? Now, I don't mean asking this directly. I know one thing that I tend to do is I tend to think of multiple ways to say the same thing. So if I don't know how to say it like in a direct translated way to the way I would typically say it in English, I know how to get around that and say it in a way which, you know, my vocabulary can accommodate. You can use this strategy to describe things as opposed to actually saying what the thing is, and overall just use it to keep the conversation flowing. I have found these techniques especially helpful for me over the years of practicing Spanish, and I hope that you guys will find them helpful as well. So with that, thank you guys for watching this video. Nos vemos pronto. Tlaskamati y cuídense. Okay? Salamat. Paz.